Hello, you are welcome back. Today we want to learn about Samson and the key lessons in his story. The story of Samson is found in the book of Judges. The book of Judges tells us about the series of judges who came and were appointed by God to oversee the affairs of Israelites. Examples are Jephthah in the book of Judges chapter 10 and chapter 11 who waged war against the Amorites. Deborah also fought the Canaanite king in the book of Judges chapter 4. Gideon was also another judge. He was the one that God commanded to reduce the number of Israelites army from 32,000 to 300. Israel war continued down the line till it reached the time of Samson. Now, in the time of Samson, in the book of Judges chapter 13, Israel already turned fervent ears to God, and God allowed the Philistines to deal with them. They cried to God several years, and God heard their cry. In the same book of Judges chapter 13, an angel appeared to Samson's mom. He told her she would give birth to a boy, and that boy would be a Nazarite. The question here is, who is a Nazarite? In the book of Numbers chapter 6, you can find who a Nazarite is there, but I have summarized it. A Nazarite is a person who could be a male or a female that was dedicated to God. They wouldn't drink alcohol. And number 2, which is in verse 5, Numbers chapter 6 verse 5, that no razor will touch their head, which means that their hair will grow freely and they will not cut it. Another possible question that you could be asking yourself now is that why did they need to separate special people for God? That was never the plan. The plan was to separate Israelites for God. But since Israelites were turning fervent ears, there were need for examples, people that would be specially dedicated for God, and they were called the Nazarites. This means that Nazarite existed long before Samson was even born. Another thing that we can take from this is that the instructions given to Samson's mom, to Samson, were not special for Samson. They were instructions special for Nazarite. And Samson was a Nazarite. The one that is important for this lecture is the cutting of his hair. So Samson not cutting his hair was not a special thing. It was a thing for all Nazarite to do. Other examples of Nazarite that we can find in the Bible are John the Baptist was a Nazarite. He was dedicated to God. Even Samuel was dedicated to God. Furthermore, Samson was given birth to and he started growing. Every time he used exceeding power, it was recorded that and the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson. So there was like an activation for him to use that power. We can see examples in the book of Judges chapter 14 verse 19 and Judges chapter 15 verse 14. What does this tell us? It tells us that God was giving him the power. Now let's move forward. In the book of Judges chapter 16, Samson started liking women from where God already commanded them not to marry, the Philistine. The woman he liked that time was Delilah, who was a Philistine. He got intimate and Delilah asked him for the source of his power, and Samson had to lie 3 times. The first time Delilah asked him, he had to lie and say that if he was tied in new bowstrings, he would be powerless. That didn't work in verse 9. The second time he said if he was tied in new ropes that he would be powerless. It didn't work in verse 12. The third time he said if his hair was braided in fabric that he would be powerless, and that still didn't work in verse 14. Now moving on to verse 17, he had to confess that the hair was the source of his power. Blade had never touched his hair before because he was a Nazarite. Eventually down the line, she cut his hair, she called the Philistines to come and all of that, and they captured Samson. They took out his eyes. After his hair was cut, the Lord left him. Why did God not leave Samson when he said bowstrings the first time? Because even Samson thought he was lying. When he said fabric, he thought he was lying. But when he said the Nazarite, Samson thought that was the reason why he had the power. And since Samson thought the hair was the source of his power, that it wasn't God, God left him to do things in his way. This is what happens to Christians when we try to take matters in our hands, because we have actually shown that we don't need God. Now verse 22, it was recorded that his hair did not take long before it grew back. But Samson didn't use any power during this time until verse 28. Samson prayed to God. Now Samson said that, Lord, give me strength one more time, because at this time Samson already realized that the source of his power was not his hair but God. The strength came unto him and eventually he died with the Philistines. That was the end of Samson's story, and we can realize now the source of his power was not his hair but the Lord. Samson was supposed to trust in the Lord and not his hair. The Bible did not give us the account. Maybe his parents were the ones who misinformed him, or they didn't really tell him what he was supposed to know. We don't know, but we know that Samson misunderstood who a Nazarite was. Now, what are the key lessons we have to pick from this? Number 1, always acknowledge God in everything you do. No matter how practical, no matter how plausible that thing is, always acknowledge God, because God gives you the power to make it possible. Number 2, the sacred instructions you receive from your secret place, whether by prayer or by message given to you, they are not ceremonial. You don't start calling friends and start discussing your instruction. Do you know that God told me this and all of that? No, you don't have to do that. You can can do that maybe when you need instructions or when you need guidance from people. That is when you can be sharing your secret instruction with people. Number 3 is that seek God's instruction and follow it. You can see that God commanded Samson and the Israelites generally not to marry from the Philistine land, and that was because they were serving a God that God did not want to enter the land, and Samson did not yet. This is the same thing that happened to Solomon too. Solomon did not offend God by marrying many wives and concubines. Solomon offended God because he married from a land that God already told him not to marry from. You can find this in the book of 1 Kings chapter 11 verse 2. Number 4, avoid distractions, focus on the mission. And number 5, if God gives us an instruction and we are to disseminate it to someone, let us try as much as possible to explain clearly to the person. This also pertains to our parents who God has given an instruction, or probably we have received an instruction in place of prayer concerning our children. It is necessary that we explain to them. Sometimes it can be dramatic and overprotective with our instructions. I'm saying, take for example, let me use Samson's parents as an example. Maybe Samson, when he was growing up, maybe his parents were like, don't cut your hair, don't do this. They didn't really explain to him why he should not cut his hair. That might have led to the misinformation that we see in later part of his life. This means that we should correctly disseminate information. Information is very powerful. Thank you very much for joining me on this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.